My husband inherited our dream house from his grandmother, but when we gathered to move in, we find his entire family living inside and refusing to leave. They laughed at us and told us to leave instead. 3 days later, they called us with bad news. Hi everyone, my husband Adam, 33 male, and I, Felicia, 30 female, have found ourselves in a bit of a pickle and would love your input. So let me start by telling you about my relationship with Adam. Adam and I met in college, and we were always drawn to each other. There was just this easy connection between us, a shared sense of humor, and the kind of comfortable friendship that makes the best relationships. It wasn't until years later, when we ran into each other at a cafe, that the sparks really began to fly. From that first coffee date onward, it's been a whirlwind of adventure and deepening love. One of the best things about Adam is his ability to make me laugh. He has this way of finding the humor in everyday situations that always brightens my day, whether it's a silly meme that he sends me when I'm stressed at work or his uncanny ability to do impressions of our cats. Yes, we're crazy cat people. He knows just how to put a smile on my face. Another thing I deeply cherish is Adam's unwavering support. I've always been a bit of a dreamer, switching career paths a few times before finding my passion. Adam has been there every step of the way. He's my loudest cheerleader, reminding me that I'm capable of anything I set my mind to. His belief in me gives me the confidence to take risks and try new things. But it's not just about the big stuff. It's the little gestures of affection that mean the world to me. He brings me coffee in the morning when I'm running late, texts me just to say that he's thinking about me, and never misses an opportunity to tell me that I look beautiful, even on my sweatpant days. His thoughtfulness fills my heart with happiness. We've also found ways to keep the romance alive as our relationship matures. We have this tradition of a surprise date once a month where one of us plans a mystery outing for the other. It keeps things exciting and reminds us to make time for just the two of us, no matter how busy life gets. These could be anything from a spontaneous picnic to trying a new restaurant, and I eagerly anticipate what he'll come up with. Adam and I, we're not just lovers, we're truly best friends. We understand each other on a deep level, and we're always there to offer a listening ear, a shoulder to cry on, or a goofy joke to lighten the mood. We build each other up and always celebrate each other's successes. Well, it was until I met Adam's family. Adam's family is very close-knit, and they have absolutely no boundaries. Also, they were very involved in Adam and my relationship. I really didn't mind it at first, because we never actually interacted with them a lot. Maybe thrice a year, during holidays or the occasional family dinner. But things started to change once Adam and I moved together. His mom, bless her heart, had the best of intentions, but I kid you not. She would just pop over unannounced, no call beforehand, just there at our doorstep with a casserole or a random new throw pillow she thought our living room just needs. At first, it was a little quirky, maybe even endearing, but pretty soon, it started making me feel uncomfortable in my own home. Then there were the constant comments about our life choices, from how we decorated our apartment. "Oh, that color is a bit bold, isn't it, dear?" to the meals we cooked. "You should really let Adam have some more meat. He looks a little thin." I get it. They were just trying to be helpful, but I constantly felt like I was under a microscope. I found myself starting to dread those dinners and those random visits from his mom. The weirdest part was, however, the way they would sometimes talk directly to Adam about our relationship as if I wasn't even in the room. Like in the middle of a family dinner, his sister would ask, "So Adam, are you sure Felicia is the one?" Or his dad would pull him aside to discuss our finances like it was his business. It made me feel dismissed and honestly, a little disrespected. I never really voiced these concerns to Adam directly in the beginning. See, I didn't want to be the difficult girlfriend who didn't like his family. I figured I would just grit my teeth, smile, and write it out. I would tell myself, "Hey, it's just a few visits a year. How bad can that be, right?" But with every awkward comment and unannounced doorstep casserole, this resentment slowly began to build. However, after Adam proposed, things changed a bit. Suddenly, I was a part of the family and they started crossing boundaries with my life too. They wanted to be involved with every aspect of the wedding and would even challenge my decisions for their choices. After we got married, things didn't change, but I learned to manage it. Since the number of interactions was limited, I would just suck it up for a few days. Oh, the wedding planning. Where do I even begin? Adam's mom took it upon herself to become my unofficial wedding planner. Despite me politely declining several times, I had this vision of a small, intimate ceremony in a beautiful garden, a classic and understated affair. Turns out she had her own vision. A big church wedding with all the distant relatives you've only met once, and enough puffy toilette to clothe the whole village. Every time I would mention my preference for a simple floral arrangement, she would come back with suggestions for elaborate ice sculptures and doves being released mid-ceremony. When I showed her the elegant invitations I designed, she declared them too plain and insisted on adding glitter and a Bible verse. We're not even particularly religious. It got to the point where I started hiding details from her, just so I could retain some control. The guest list was a whole other battleground. I wanted to keep things small and prioritize friends who'd been there through our ups and downs. Adam's family, however, insisted on inviting every second cousin and their neighbor's dog walker. Every time I tried to trim the list, I would get comments like, "But darling, Aunt Mildred was there for Adam's chicken pox. Surely you can't leave her out." It wasn't just his mom either. Adam's sister decided the classic wedding cake I'd chosen was boring and began a campaign for a 6-tiered, neon-colored monstrosity that looked like it belonged at a rave. His dad somehow became fixated on hiring a polka band because that's what they had at my wedding, and it was a blast. There were so many little moments like this that added up to one big feeling of overwhelm. It was my wedding day, but it increasingly felt like it was being hijacked by the entire extended family. At times, the whole thing made me want to pull my hair out, or maybe elope on a desert island with only Adam and a stray llama for company. A few months ago, Adam's grandmother passed away. This was especially hard on Adam. He was the closest to her out of all his siblings, and they spent a lot of time together since she lived nearby. I tried my best to be there for him every step of the way. I helped Adam arrange the funeral, took on more of the household chores so he could focus on his family, and simply held him close while he cried. Seeing Adam in such a deep grief broke my heart. He's usually the rock, the one whose strength I lean on. During those few weeks, it felt like the roles were reversed. He would withdraw sometimes, staring off into space with this lost look in his eyes. Other times, the grief would wash over him in waves, and he'd sob uncontrollably. I just wanted to take his pain away, but I knew there was no easy fix. His family was also devastated, of course, but their way of grieving was different. They were loud, some would even say dramatic, with lots of wailing and loud expressions of sorrow. I understand that everyone processes loss in their own way, but it felt a little overwhelming at times, especially since Adam needed space and quiet to reflect. A few days later, when the will was read, it was found that Adam's grandmother had left in the house that she used to live in. Adam and she had shared many memories in that place, and despite the circumstances, I was happy for him. It felt like a bittersweet gift, a way to keep her close even though she was gone. Plus, that house, well, it was secretly my dream house. You see, it wasn't just any house. It was this charming little Victorian, just a short walk from the bustling downtown, but tucked away on a tree-lined street. It had one of those wrap-around porches I'd always wanted, perfect for sipping iced tea on warm evenings. Inside, there were built-in bookshelves, high ceilings, and a fireplace I could just imagine us cozying up in front of during winter. For as long as we'd been together, I would casually mention it to Adam whenever we walked past. "Isn't that place adorable?" When Adam first received the news, he seemed a little overwhelmed. It wasn't just the emotional connection, but also the practical side of things. The house was old and would need some updating, and neither of us was particularly handy. Plus, it was bigger than our apartment, which meant more space and more responsibility. Despite a small flicker of worry, there was a definite spark of excitement in his eyes as we started discussing the possibilities. We took a walk over to the house a couple of days later. It needed some work for sure, but the bones were good, as they say. Standing in the living room, surrounded by faded wallpaper and dusty furniture, I couldn't help but feel a surge of hope. This could be our fresh start. a place to build a life together that felt truly ours. We were excited to have this place and were looking forward to moving in there. However, because of some work commitments, we weren't going to be able to arrive until the day after our belongings were delivered. So, Adam gave his keys to his brother Mark, 31 male, and asked if he could oversee the movers and make sure everything got placed roughly in the right rooms. Mark agreed readily, and we figured it was a simple enough task. I mean, the furniture had labels, Mark could read, and he seemed enthusiastic about helping out. We were in the middle of a hectic work week, so it felt like a weight lifted off our shoulders to have one less thing to worry about. The next day, when we arrived in our car, we were shocked to see moving vans parked outside the house. My heart sank a little. Was Mark attempting another helpful rearranging session? But as we got closer, we realized this was something else entirely. The entire family was there, not just Mark, but Adam's parents, his sister with her husband in tow, and a scattering of cousins I barely even recognized. They were unloading boxes, carrying furniture, and generally acting like they were in the middle of their own move-in day. A wave of confusion washed over me, followed by a hot flush of anger. What on earth was happening? Adam looked equally baffled. He approached his parents, who were directing the chaotic scene, with an air of authority. "Mom, Dad, what's going on here?" His mother smiled serenely, as if this was the most normal thing in the world. "We're moving in, darling. This house has so much space, and we figured, why leave it empty? We're a family. We should all be together." My jaw practically hit the floor. Did they seriously just decide to move themselves into our house without even asking? All those weeks of planning, those excited conversations about paint colors and furniture arrangements, evaporated in an instant. It felt like a punch to the gut. Adam's dad chimed in, patting him on the shoulder. "Think of it as a housewarming gift, son. Now you don't have to worry about fixing this place up all by yourself." I wanted to scream. Instead, I took a deep, shaky breath. "With all due respect," I said, my voice tight with restrained fury, "this was not your decision to make. This is our home." Adam's sister scoffed. "Oh, Felicia, don't be so dramatic. We're a close family. We help each other out." That's when I lost it. Help would have been asking before barging in. This is not help. This is a complete invasion of privacy. I was so angry, I could feel my face burning. I was beyond frustrated and overwhelmed. Years of dealing with their overbearing behavior seemed to bubble up to the surface. "He gave us the keys," Adam's sister exclaimed, as if that settled the matter. "He said we could make ourselves at home." Adam looked stricken. "Wait, I just gave Mark the keys to oversee the movers. That's it." "I never said." He trailed off, the realization dawning on him. Then Adam's mom, Charlotte, 67 female, stepped forward, a determined glint to her eye. "Well, darling, this house certainly is quite big for just the two of you. Think of how lovely it would be. The whole family together under one roof." I was seething. Lovely for you maybe, but this is not happening. We need our own space. This house was left to Adam, not the entire extended family. My words seemed to have little effect. They just laughed, a dismissive sound that fueled my anger even further. Adam's dad clapped him on the back. "Your mother's right, son. Don't be selfish. Besides," he lowered his voice, "if you don't want to share, well, you can always find somewhere else to live." The threat hung heavy in the air. It was a low blow, playing on Adam's loyalty and his fear of being cast out. For a moment, I saw a flicker of uncertainty in Adam's eyes, the old pattern of trying to please everyone threatening to resurface. He looked at me, a silent plea for support. That's when something inside me snapped. I tried to be polite, to be reasonable, but their blatant disregard for our boundaries had pushed me too far. I took a step forward, my voice firm and unwavering. "No, this is our home. You have no right to simply take it over. If you refuse to leave, we will call the police." A hush fell over the group. Shock registered on their faces. Clearly, they hadn't expected pushback, especially not from me. Adam's sister sputtered indignantly. "You wouldn't dare." "Try me," I countered. Adam looked at me, a mix of surprise and a newfound resolve hardening his features. At that moment, I think he finally realized the extent of their disrespect. It was like a switch flipped in him. "Mom, Dad, this was never the plan. I appreciate you wanting to help, but this is too much," he said, his voice steady. "Felicia is right. We deserved to have our own space. But his parents refused. Adam was already tired from the drive. He looked at me and told me that he couldn't deal with this right now and that he just wanted to leave. I told him okay, and we both got into our car and drove away. I found a hotel nearby and we booked a room for the night. For the next 3 days, it was a standoff. Adam spent hours on the phone, trying to reason with his parents. His voice a tense mix of pleading and frustration. Each call would end the same way: shouting matches, accusations, and ultimately, a slam phone. "They say I'm being ungrateful," Adam would sigh, sinking into the couch. "That I'm choosing you over them." I would wrap my arms around him. "You're choosing us, Adam. Our relationship. Our right to build a life on our own terms." But I could see the worry etched on his face. The weight of years of family pressure threatening to pull him back into old patterns. We even tried visiting the house, hoping a face-to-face conversation might yield different results. It didn't. As we walked through the door, the tension hit us like a physical force. Every piece of furniture felt like a territorial claim. Adam's mom shot daggers at me from the kitchen, where she was loudly rattling pots and pans, while his dad occupied the living room, feet propped up on the coffee table, watching a baseball game at a near-splitting volume. "Adam, son, sit down. Let's talk this out," his dad said, without even glancing away from the TV. Adam tried, he really did, but every attempt at discussing a move-out timeline was met with deflection and guilt trips. They were masters at sidestepping accountability. By the time we left, my frustration boiled over. "They're not going to budge, Adam. This is ridiculous." He just nodded, looking defeated. "I know, he trailed off, unable to finish the sentence. I knew exactly how he felt. He loved his family, but he also loved me. And for the first time, those two loves were in direct conflict. It seemed like an impossible choice: stand up for our independence and likely cause a painful rift, or give in and lose a part of ourselves. However, 3 days later, everything changed. We finally retreated to a hotel to get some space and clear our heads when the phone rang in the middle of the night. My heart pounded as I saw Adam's parents' number flash on the screen. "Hello," I answered hesitantly, a knot of dread forming in my stomach. Adam's dad's voice was strained and panicked. "Felicia, there's been an accident at the house. The oven exploded. We need your help." Before I could even process what he said, Adam was grabbing his keys and ushering me out the door. We drove through the dark, silent streets, a mix of fear and confusion swirling within us. As we approached the house, my worry deepened. A fire truck was parked outside, lights flashing ominously, and I could see a cluster of figures in the driveway. Adam's family, looking disheveled and shaken. Apparently, his mom had tried to make a late-night snack, not realizing the gas line connected to the old oven was leaky. Thankfully, no one was seriously injured, but the kitchen was a complete disaster. Charred cabinets, shattered glass, and the acrid smell of smoke filled the air. My initial concern for their safety quickly morphed into a different kind of anger. Everything in me wanted to say, "I told you so." They had barged into a house they didn't understand, messing with appliances they had no business touching, and now this was the result. When we reached the house, Adam wasn't just concerned. He was furious. He checked in to make sure everyone was unhurt, but then his anger erupted. "How could you be so careless?" he yelled, his voice cracking with a mix of rage and disbelief. "You invaded this house, you disrespected my grandmother's memory, and now you've practically destroyed it." His family sputtered apologies and excuses, but Adam wasn't having it. "I gave you 3 days to leave peacefully," he continued, his face flushed. 3 days to respect our wishes, but you wouldn't listen, and this is the result." He then picked up his phone, no longer trying to hold back his fury. "I'm calling the police. You will leave this house now, or you'll be hauled out in handcuffs." There was no hesitation in his voice, no wavering. This was a side of Adam I had rarely seen, and it took me even by surprise. His threat finally seemed to cut through the fog of entitlement. His parents paled. His sister actually whimpered, and there was a hurried scramble to gather their remaining belongings. They left, but not without a final round of accusations thrown our way, blaming us for their misfortune. As the door slammed shut, I saw the full weight of the situation crash down on Adam. His shoulders slumped, and the anger drained away, leaving behind a desolate kind of heartbreak. This was his family, the people who were supposed to love and support him unconditionally, and yet They had trampled on his boundaries, jeopardized his inheritance, and ultimately forced him to choose between them and his own sanity. The damage was extensive. Charred walls would need to be repainted, the shattered tile floor replaced, and the entire kitchen likely gutted and remolded. The cost, both financial and emotional, made my head spin. What can we do in this case? Do you guys have any suggestions? A lot of you guys recommended that we sue our family members to recoup the cost of the damage. But as much as we were tempted, as much as we seethed with anger, that's a line we couldn't bring ourselves to cross. Suing them would be dropping a nuclear bomb on our relationship. Sure, there might be some satisfaction in the short-term destruction, but the fallout would poison us for years to come. The first task was getting that leaky gas line fixed. We managed to find a plumber who took pity on our situation and squeezed us in quickly. Once that urgent safety issue was resolved, we stood in the charred shell of our would-be kitchen and took stock. The true extent of the damage was overwhelming. Cabinets were warped, appliances ruined, and the smell of smoke clung to every surface. We got quotes from several contractors, each one making us wince at the estimated costs. Our savings wouldn't even cover half of the necessary repairs. Suddenly, all those dreamy conversations about granite countertops and farmhouse sinks seemed like a cruel joke. We had moved from frustration to a cold, sinking dread. That evening, with takeout containers strewn over the living room floor, cooking was out of the question. I cautiously broached the subject. "Adam, it's okay if we need to put things on hold for a while," I said, my voice trailing off. He nodded, but I could see the worry lines etch deeper into his face. "I hate to admit it, but you might be right. I don't know how we can swing this right now." And then, an idea flickered in the back of my mind. It was a little crazy, a little unorthodox, but maybe, just maybe. What if, I started hesitantly, we tried fixing it ourselves? At least some of it. Adam looked startled. "Are you serious? We have zero experience with that kind of thing." "I know," I said, their nervousness bubbling up alongside a strange sense of determination. "But there are YouTube tutorials and books, and maybe if we can just do the demolition and clean up ourselves, then we can at least afford to hire someone for the actual building part." To my surprise, Adam didn't immediately dismiss the idea. We spent the rest of the evening huddled over our laptops, watching DIY videos and scrolling through online forums. It was intimidating, but also oddly hopeful. Maybe we could salvage something from this mess after all. I'm a bit worried, as I don't want to damage it even more. I've seen enough home renovation disasters on TV to know that good intentions aren't enough when it comes to structural work. Until then, I have set up a small space in the kitchen that wasn't damaged. We are also going to be relying heavily on takeouts until this is done. Thank goodness for microwaves, at least we can still reheat leftovers. The truth is, I was terrified of the demolition task ahead. Where to even start? What if we accidentally knocked out a load-bearing wall and the whole house came crumbling down? My mind raced with visions of tangled wires, burst pipes, and myself ending up electrocuted in a puddle of our own DIY despair. Adam, to his credit, tried to be reassuring. "Hey, we're resourceful. We'll take it slow, do our research, and call in the professionals if we get stuck." But looking around at the soot-covered ruins of what was supposed to be our dream kitchen, it was hard to share his optimism. Adam hasn't spoken to his family since that night. He ignores their calls and their increasingly desperate text messages. It breaks my heart a little to see him so withdrawn. The easygoing guy I fell in love with, now carrying this heavy burden of strained family ties. When they do manage to reach out to me, it is the same script each time. Excuses about the faulty gas line, insistence that it truly was an accident, even a few pointed jabs about how a proper family would just work through this together. But what they haven't done, not once, is say the words, "We're sorry. Sorry for barging into your home. Sorry for disrespecting our wishes. Sorry for nearly burning the place down." They seem incapable of understanding the depth of their violation, and even worse, unwilling to acknowledge it. The fact that they can only see this as a simple accident, a bit of bad luck, reveals a staggering lack of self-awareness. Even now, the blame shifts subtly onto us. If only we'd been more welcoming and more accommodating. The whole situation makes my blood boil. It's one thing to make a mistake, but true contrition requires admitting you were wrong and taking ownership. That's the basic foundation of respect, and it's what they've consistently refused to give us. The more defensive they get, the deeper their denial, and the more convinced I become that this distance between Adam and his family, painful as it is necessary. I try to be there for Adam as best as I can. Sometimes that means simply offering a silent presence while he rots in front of the TV, his mind clearly 1,000 miles away. Other times, I manage to coax him out for a walk, a change of scenery to lift the weight a little. Mostly though, I just listen. I let him vent the lingering frustrations, the anger now tinged with sadness, the lingering confusion about how things got so irrevocably broken with the people who are supposed to love him unconditionally. Hi guys, I have an update for you. Turns out, those YouTube tutorials and handy DIY Instagram accounts are a lifesaver. It took a few tries and some colorful language on my part, but I managed to replace a good chunk of the damaged floor tiles. Adam helped me with the grouting, bless him, and by the end of the 2 weeks, we were looking at a halfway decent floor. The window situation though, that's a whole different story. One look at the warped smoke damaged frame, and I knew that was professional territory. Replacing windows requires tools and skills I definitely don't possess, and the thought of ending up with a leaky mess was enough to make us both shudder. We've made a mental note: add window guy to our ever-growing list of necessary expenses. The biggest question mark hanging over our half-demolished kitchen is the countertop. That's where the bulk of the fire damage is. The one smooth surface, now a charred and blistered eyesore. We've tossed around ideas, maybe something industrial style like concrete, or try to salvage it with a tile, a kind of patched up mosaic vibe. Honestly, it's both exciting and overwhelming to have so many decisions to make. The situation with Adam's family remained a simmering tension in the air. Weeks turned into months, the silence between him and his parents a heavy, unspoken presence. Then one evening, there was a knock on the door. I opened it to find Adam's sister Sarah standing on our doorstep. She looked hesitant, a nervous twist to her usual confident demeanor. "Can I talk to Adam?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. I felt a surge of protectiveness, a hot flash of resentment for everything she and her family had put us through. Adam appeared behind me, surprise registering on his face. "Sarah, what are you doing here?" His tone was clipped, guarded. I could practically see the walls he'd erected go up, a barrier against further hurt. Sarah took a shaky breath. I came to apologize, Adam. Not for the accident, that wasn't anyone's fault, but for how we acted afterward, for not respecting your boundaries, for making this whole thing about us. Adam didn't respond. I stepped aside, gesturing for her to come in. "Give him a minute," I murmured, squeezing his hand briefly before retreating to the bedroom. I didn't try to eavesdrop. As she left, Adam pulled me into a tight embrace. "That was necessary," he said quietly. "I don't know if everything with mom and dad will ever be fully okay, but maybe this is a start." I held him close, relief washing over me. It wasn't a grand reconciliation, wiping away all the hurt, but it was a step. Hi guys, I know it's only been a day since my last update, but we have some major news. Yesterday, Sarah swung by the apartment again, this time with an envelope in hand. "Don't get too excited," she said with a wry smile, handing it to Adam. "It won't cover all the repairs, but it's a start." In sound, we found a check and a handwritten note. It was from Adam's parents, expressing their sincere apologies, not just for the accident, but for their blatant disregard of our boundaries, for their hurtful words, and for all the ways they made us feel disrespected in our own home. They admitted they'd been blinded by excitement, caught up in a misguided sense of family entitlement, and in the chaos, they'd forgotten the most important thing, their love for Adam. Sarah explained that the entire family had contributed to the check. It wasn't some grand gesture meant to fix everything, but rather a tangible symbol of their desire to make amends. She also mentioned that her parents had been so nervous to come themselves, worried we wouldn't be ready, but they hoped this was a step in the right direction. Reading the note, I saw the tension in Adam's shoulders slowly release. We both felt a bit blindsided, to be honest. I certainly wasn't expecting a full-blown apology, let alone financial help, after the way they behaved. Yet there was a sincerity to the words that we couldn't deny. Adam got a bit emotional. He hugged Sarah tightly, the weight of the last few months seeming to lift slightly. It wasn't the money that mattered, he told her, but the acknowledgement, the true apology. There were tears in both their eyes. I shared relief that this rift wasn't destined to be permanent. Later, Adam decided to call his parents. I stayed in the other room, not wanting to intrude, but the tension that gripped my own heart started to ease. I am just glad that this is all over. I also want to thank all of you for your suggestions on how to renovate our kitchen. I will always be grateful. That was a wrap up for today's story. Thank you very much for listening. Smash that like button for me and subscribe for more stories. Thanks again, and we'll be seeing you in the next one.